Um, okay, good morning.
Good morning. Yes.
I am super excited to be back in conversation with you. And we were just sharing off camera around the ripples that the first conversation had. And who knew?
Right. Yeah.
And,
People really
and I guess,
resonated with different things. Yeah.
yeah, so many different things. It was so fun to see and so surprising. And I guess that's probably going to come into the conversation today, right? It's like it was really created from just an inkling, like a feeling of, oh, I feel pulled to have this conversation. And then, I feel pulled to hit record. And then the conversation just went kind of where it went from our state of beings. They collided, and then this is what got created, and then it got shared. And so I love that. Just feels like a perfect example of effortless creating.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, exactly like that.
And
Beautiful.
so what I thought we would start off with today is maybe the opposite of that. I don't know, we'll find out. But what I'm going to throw into the mix for you to talk about and elaborate on is this. Well, I'll share my experience. So when I started, it was about 6 years ago that I started to get interested in the three principles. That's where I kind of came across it, law of attraction. So it was really around 6 years ago. And I remember at some point bumping up against this idea that, well, then everything's just okay. So what's the point? And I don't mean what's the point, like as what's the point of continuing in life? I mean, just like, what's the point of creating anything different then if I can just be here and love what is? So I was really good at kind of questioning the thinking that was taking me away from peace and coming back to peace. But then that was like the end of the chapter. And it kind of stinted the creativity.
Yeah.
So can you say whatever you want to say, Dominic, about that? Because I don't think I'm unique in that. And I see it a lot. People are kind of bobbing along. That's how I would describe it. I'm kind of just bobbing along, and it's like, well, it's okay. It's enough. But it feels like when I'm with people, man, there's just a fucking genius in there, but they don't know it, right? It's like, oh, there's like this just a bobbing along thing happening, and like well, it'll happen when it happens kind of approach.
Yeah.
And so, can you just help us kind of understand that a bit more, please?
It's so important. What you're talking about is so important. It's kind of like this essential pivot place to what true creation is all about. I relate to what you're saying because I watch that too. Where people get to peace, to contentment, to satisfaction. And then the way I might say it is stuck there. So that point of peace, that point of contentment, satisfaction, and Sydney Banks pointed to that. He said, I think the word he used was contentment, to be content. I think he used that as this state is the state to be content. He may have said satisfied, like, but I don't know. But the vibration is the same. Abraham points to the same word. They actually use that same word of contentment. So a lot of what I've seen about this now is really something that was distinguished through Abraham's teaching about this. Why that state of contentment is important is because you are not actually creating prior to that. You're just a reaction to dissatisfaction. It's just really, you think it's creating, but you're just reacting. You're just reacting to life, just reacting to everything that's wrong, everything that's not good in your life. So in other words, there is not true creation. There is not pure creation, because there is something you are against. And here's the thing, and God is against nothing. God does not create anything because God's against anything. God creates only to create. So cannot be any true creation until a point of satisfaction or contentment is the starting point. That is where true creation is birthed from, that state.
Okay, I love that. So there's a distinction there between before that point of contentment, any doing is a reaction. So nice. We're still doing, there's still happening, there's still stuff happening out there. We're still taking action. And some might say that's a creation, but what you're kind of distinguishing is it's more of a reaction than a pure creation.
Yeah.
Then you hit that pivot point, and then from there on, the pure creation can emerge.
The possibility of it arises only from that state of non-resistance. And that is what the state of contentment is. It is the state of contentment is where I am no longer in resistance to what is. I am no longer in resistance to what is. And so from that state, then the possibility of creation arises only from that state. If you go from a state that has any resistance to what is, you are stuck with it, because all of your focus and attention, all of your action is arising and sourced in what you do not want. And this is really interesting because, and by the way, I've been really, there is no creating. It doesn't matter that people think they're creating. But look, I put a business together. But look, look at the money I have made. That is not a creation. You've gathered it and increased the whole, the lack, right? So in other words, from my insecurity of uncertainty of where life is, I need money in order to get that sort of security for myself, to feel at peace. And the more money I get, the larger the whole. It's why you have billionaires who are more fearful of losing their money than you and I are. It's why you have people at that state who have greater insecurity. It's why in the last, kind of horrible recession, I remember in 2008, there was this suicide by, there were these names who have had billions of dollars and were so hit in that recession that they may have been left with only 2 or 3 billion. And suicide. Yeah. Suicide was it, because How do you go on from something like that?
Yeah.
Right? Because there's no creation that's happened. You haven't expanded from a consciousness. You're just as lackful, grounded in scarcity as you were ever, in a much bigger, deeper way than you ever were before.
Yeah. So, and you're talking about creation there. It's like there's a evolution of your awareness, consciousness. Like, this is what I think I'm hearing, Dominic, when you use the word creation and that kind of language, that's like your definition of it. If I'm
the rest of it is true creation is from nothing. It's from nothing that it arises. You can use your action to move around that which has already been created. You can move it around. You can move money from over there into your bank account. You can gather up things here and there. That's not creation. That's moving around that which has been created. But here's the thing, when you are not creating from a state of nothing, what you're actually doing is expanding the whole underneath it. And so what the billions of dollars were a manifestation of scarcity at a higher and higher level than you and I are experiencing. They were the form of scarcity in a way that you couldn't even imagine, right? So that level of gap and insecurity to be experienced with billions, right? As opposed to you and I, who might say, well, I only have a few hundred left, or I only have, yeah, that's real scarcity, sure, right? But there are more forms of it. There are other forms of it. And that's what's being created. As long as you are going from a reaction, it's what's being expressed. What's coming into form is that.
Okay, so I've got a question for you then, because I can see how there is real power in almost, I'm going to try this out as I'm speaking it, and let's see if it fits, Dominic, right? It's like almost as though when I see myself in a certain light as, gosh, I can really create wealth whenever I want. And I haven't always been able to say that. But it really truly looks to me now like I can create wealth. Now, does it always feel effortless? No. So there's still room for me to grow. But it looks to me, how I currently see the world, that there's real power in owning that identity, seeing myself in that light. That feels very forward moving for me. But what I hear you say is this is just how my mind's interpreting it. It's like the gap of scarcity. Say, wow, I can see how when you're a billionaire and you identify, as a billionaire, and money is part of your identity and your success and how people see you, then that actually is not super healthy if you only really see yourself that way. It's like I'm putting everything onto that. And if that's gone, then wow, I'm in trouble, to the point of doing something that they might never have ever considered before, So
it's a clear example of not realizing who you really are, right? That's an example, not realizing who you really are and thinking that who you are is somehow dependent or associated with that.
Yeah. So Dominic, then can it be helpful to hold that identity where it serves? So kind of how I described it to you, like hold it lightly, but it's not who I am. But it is. It's like who I am in terms of, gosh, I really see myself as powerful at creating wealth, and that has that forward movement. That's like fun for me to
Yeah, let's
a state of being, but it's not everything. It's not like all of who I am. I don't have to be super gripped by that. It's okay if one day I wake up and actually that doesn't look so true anymore.
Well, we will look now from what can happen from the state of contentment and satisfaction, which is the only true state for creation to happen. So prior to that, prior to that, what there is some resistance. All resistance is thought,
Mm-hmm.
and all thought in resistance is a thought in opposition. A thought in opposition is a thought in resistance. I could say, easy to understand, would be it's a thought against myself. It is a belief against myself. Right away, if you have a belief against yourself, you don't know who you are. Okay? Like, so that just right away, that belief against myself, that I don't know that I could do that. I've never done something like that. You don't know who you are. Right? So a thought in resistance, there's a thought of doubt, and that is not in the sort of as an emotional harmonious, right? So it's a thought of doubt, has a resistance to it, and all thought in resistance is a thought against yourself. Now I'll take it even further, and I'll say that a thought against anything is a thought in resistance. So a thought against anything is thought in resistance, because once you really know who you are, you would not hold a thought against anything, because that thought against anything, if you know who you are, you would not be able, that thought against anything, you would not, God, the energy of all things, will never think against itself.
Yes. So if we use my example then, Dominic, because you already heard my thought that's in resistance, right? It's like, I could make money at any time, but it's not always effortless. So there's my resistance.
Yes, that has a little resistance in it. Has
thought,
a little resistance in it. By the way, that's really good to notice the mix of vibration. Let's here's what's important about the mix of vibration. First of all, relax, give yourself a break. You're fine. You're not gonna ever have pure thought, right? Because if you just wanted to come here and have all these pure thoughts, you should have stayed where you came from.
Send me back. Send me back.
Should have stayed where you came from. So Sydney Banks distinguished the difference between thought and thought. Thank you. I don't know why he used these words, and it's so confusing, right? Because he used thought with a capital T and thought with a little t, and it can confuse, right? But then the way he would say is divine thought. Divine thought. So what is divine thought? It's a thought of God. It is a pure thought. It is a thought and no resistance to the thought. So you just said, right, a less than divine thought, which is fine, right? So, which is fine, because see, in this finite perspective, that's you will forever come to know who you really are. And it's these little things like that that will keep showing you there's more to you than you think. There's more to you than you think. So you move to a place of saying, I can make money. It's that I understand that my true nature is abundance. So I don't fear that. And I don't have anything against, being able to, enjoy wealth or have that. So this is great. So very good. Like you're getting close, like you understand who you are and all of that. But it does take work though. Okay. There we go. Now we just put in a tiny little bit of resistance within. So which would, you see, it starts to dirty it up a little, right? This is what Sydney Banks said. What happens is like there's this divine energy contaminated by your thought.
Mm.
And that is your personal thought, right? And actually, in that example, you can kind of see how it dirties it up a little, right? Oh, yeah, wow, this is who I am. This is what it is. And it's like, yeah, but that, I mean, you do have to work at it though, right? Like, see, it's like a little bit. And you know the thing about those thoughts when it's a resistance thought? And this is why I said, be easy on yourself, get to relax a little, because that wasn't even your thought. You think you invented it? You really think you made that thought up? That thought, I bet, was going on in your life probably from a very young age, probably somewhere. And if it wasn't at home, then it was at school. And if it wasn't, it was amongst friends. And where it was like somewhere that thought came up, was not your thought, but it did come up, and it came up a lot and a lot and a lot and a lot. And even on the news, it said it. And even on, you know, in the stories you heard about the people who really, really did work hard. And sure, of course they had this, but they really sacrificed. Some of them even were even divorced and had to do. That's how hard you have to work if this is what you have to do. So then you pick it up and you're like believing it.
Yes. And so let's talk then about the difference between work and hard work, because I think that's the same about creation and effortless creation, work and hard works. So it's not that we're not putting work in. It's not that we're not doing. It's not that we're not in action. It's more the feeling that's different. When money is hard to make, money requires, you got to work. When I say it like that, it's like, gosh, time and energy and, the heaviness, the resistance. But money takes work. And it's like fun.
I'm gonna propose altering the words to make the distinction clearer.
Please do.
Yeah. So work. So the reason I'll alter the words is work and hard work are grades of the same effort. I'll call it. But what we're really referring to, if we talk about work, really what we're referring to is action. That's what we're talking about. We're talking about action. We're talking about doing. That's actually what we're talking about, right? So we're talking about doing. And so there is something that we can distinguish as an effortless doing, an effortless expression. And then there's work, which has a resistance in it. And the difference between these two things is that it's so funny. It's like the minute I put resistance into the equation, then it will require my own personal energy, which is now effort, in order to overcome the resistance, which I'm the one who put it there. This is what's so funny about this, right? So takes hard work is only true because I have resistance. And then once I put resistance, for sure, it's going to take effort now. And that effort must come from me, because it's not an energy that comes from source. So, because source does not recognize this resistance. This thought is not true. The thought in resistance is not true, right? So it is unrecognized by source. It's a thought. It's an illusion of belief, which has no truth in it. So source can't recognize what is not true. So I, though, do recognize it as truth, as a truth above all else, above the truth. It's a truth above God. I recognize this. I know this is true. I know it, right? That's like really, right? Like that. So that's such a resistance. And so now there is no energy to go through that other than my own. So once I'm in my own consumption, that's what happens, is a consumption of my own physical energy in order to act against. Notice this is, again, I'm acting against. Well, God acts against nothing.
Mm.
So if you go to war, you go alone. If you go to war, you go alone. So when you don't have God behind you.
Yeah, my money's on the other guy, I gotta say, Dominic.
So you're now in resistance. You're consuming your own energy, and that's why this feels like work. What the hell? This feels like work now. This is a lot of effort here. Well, it's absolutely true. It's a lot of effort. Yeah, absolutely. And it'll continue to take effort and hard work for you to overcome your own resistance. Oh, by the way, here's another thing. You could just like drop that if you want. You just like drop that. That's like, you just stuck this thing in the way that now requires hard work to get past. You could also like drop that, because you don't have to think that. And furthermore, you can stop insisting on that. This is the thing about thoughts. It's a thought I keep thinking. It's a thought I keep insisting on, insisting the truth of it, arguing for how true this is. And so, yeah, you can cut that out if you want, right? You just cut it out, and then that thing wouldn't be in the way anymore. And then there wouldn't be effort.
Let me dive in there, Dominic, because I love what you're saying. And I love how you have such a cheeky smile on your face as you say, you know, it's so simple. We can just let that go if you want. And I think that I think we talked about this in the first conversation that we had. There's a knowing of who you are truly that allows you to let that personal thought go. So how might someone who isn't as well versed, who isn't as developed in their knowledge, their understanding of who they are, what's a good starting point for them to be able to do that letting go?
Right. And I do want to say that we're all in the same place. Everyone is as developed as anyone else, and the connection to source and the access to that infinite intelligence is equal everywhere. And it's so simple, because where your power is now. So your point of power is in the present moment, because it's in this present moment that, so your point of power is in the present moment, because it is in the present moment that you can act. It is in the present moment that you can do. Only in the present moment that you can act. It is only in the present moment that you can feel anything. So can you see how this part about in this present moment becomes so true? So now we're all equal here. We're all in the present moment. We're all have the ability, the capacity to act in this moment. And in this moment is where we can feel what we feel in this moment. That feeling part becomes so important. The trouble with the way I explained it is people can get wrapped up in, oh, so yeah, I got these thoughts and probably all these resistant thoughts. And then they go off into the thoughts, right, that are there. So I don't know, I might have a lot of thoughts. I'm not sure where they came from. Probably when I was a kid, probably I picked up a bunch and they're in my way now. These are these things, right? And that's where you get all of that whole analysis and trying to solve all that stuff. But meanwhile, care less about these thoughts and all of this resistance. Care less about that and care more about this source energy that is flowing through you, this wisdom flowing through you. So, well, what should I do about my limitations? Care less about the limitations and care a little more about the wisdom that is flowing. So that's one important aspect. My feeling in the moment, in this moment, tells me the mix of this vibration. It is telling me the purity of the allowing state that has an intelligence in it flowing, which that thinking that's flowing through me, coming into my mind, the feeling is telling me the purity of that thinking, the wisdom and intelligence in the thinking that flows. So what mastery is my ability to be in this moment, in discerning the feeling in this moment, the wisdom in this moment. I'm in this moment right now, and I'm really getting feeling like overwhelmed. I feel overwhelmed. I feel like I'm never going to be able to get this done. I feel like, okay, if you can catch that feeling, the feeling, if you can catch it, is not beautiful. So it's just not beautiful. It's got a tension in it and a stress in it. You cannot feel like that without thinking something from the personal mind. And so now I know there's a thinking that's there, which I don't need to think. The reason I don't need to think about it, or I don't need to think this thought, is because it's unintelligent. It comes from the personal mind, right? So from a divine mind, divine thought, I'm acting on this and I'm moving forward. And I see a number of steps that I'm going to have to call those people. And then I'm going to have to gather this when it comes in. And then I've got to organize that. But that's just what's so. There's no overwhelmment in that. And in fact, what divine mind knows is that's all going to get done. That's all like part of the process. And by the way, it's not only part of the process, you're going to love it. It's going to love doing this. Right? You're going to love that phone call. You're going to love it when they say yes, they want to work with you. There's nothing more satisfying than when you have that phone call and they're going to say they want to work with you. And then you're going to love it when the check comes in and you put it in your accounting system. You're just going to love that. You're just going to love the feeling of putting it in there. So do you notice how much action? You're going to love it all, right? But the moment you're standing in this present moment and you're going, there's just a lot to do. Like I need to and I need to keep up with my posts. And if I don't, well, you can see that there's the beginning of a thought. It's bullshit. And you're believing it. And that's why the feeling just went off. But again, mastery is, do you notice it? Because if you don't notice it, I love this Abraham quote. It's my favorite probably. Do you notice it? No. Because if you don't notice it, don't worry, it'll get worse. Don't worry, it'll get worse, right? So you just went to a personal thought. The feeling just dropped. You don't notice it. It's okay. It'll get worse. right? So because what happens is law of attraction will take the vibration and expand it. Takes all vibration and expand it. So pretty soon a thought of overwhelmment begins to get expanded into a thought of doubt. I don't think you can get all this done. I don't think anybody could get all this done, right? So let alone you, right? And by the way, in this thought, more thoughts come to reinforce that vibration. Yeah, let alone you, someone with your skills. You don't even understand this stuff. You think you're going to get this done. So more thoughts, which suddenly become worry. Like, you're really going to mess this thing up to anxiety, to complete discouragement, and just keeps going. But at some point that serves you. The reason this is happening is it says, just trying to wake you up. Trying to wake you up. It's what that says is, this is what it feels like to think like this. Do you want to keep thinking like this? This is what it feels like to think like this. Is this how you want to feel? Is this how you want to think? This is what it feels like to continue to think like this. You are free. Your mind is free. You can think what you wish. You can insist on thinking this, or you can think something else. I think it's important to say here, this is where people say, though, Sid said it, but the trouble is once you're on that level of consciousness, I move to that level of consciousness that has that kind of energy and vibration of anxiety and worry, there are no thoughts available. This is the problem. There are no thoughts available to me. Because on that level of consciousness, there are not these thoughts that contain the solution. And it's that Einstein quote, you cannot solve your problems at the same level. What the hell do I do? I'm really stuck, right? and law of attraction, thank you very much, is just pulling me more and more in the direction of this. Because it does. It assists you. It assists you with your creation, including this one. Including this one that you're creating right now, right? Do you see how effortless creation is? See how effortless this is? Because the law of attraction does all the work. You don't have to do anything. Law of attraction does all the work. Do you see how you're creating and how you're creating more and more with increased momentum? It's so easy. It's so simple. It just happens, right? So, but here's the
Can I jump in, Dominic? Because I think that's really important. I just want to slow that down, because it's the same thing, but it almost like a different direction. And I think a lot of people miss that, don't understand that, have never been educated about that, have never heard that before. But it's like you're doing what we're talking about, but just in a different direction.
The other.
Yeah, and there's something really valuable in understanding that, really seeing that, because that can be an entry point into, oh, well, maybe, and that letting go piece. You know, maybe if there's I'm really experiencing that right now. So maybe if that's true, it's also true in the opposite direction.
Yes.
You know, and that can be enough of a, just curious about that. Can see enough about that now to allow myself to let go of the having to do it all that's taking me that way, and back kind of like up to a higher level of consciousness.
Yeah, I love that you brought this point, because see what you just said, what it takes off the table, just takes right off the table, is you are a creator. Let's just take that off the table. So let's not discuss that. See, once that's off the table, you stop thinking about that. You are a creator. That's all that's going on. And so don't say, I'm not creating over here and I want to create over there. You are a creator. So get that off your mind. You don't have to worry about that part at all, right? Let's just understand this, because you are creating that just as effortlessly. Do you notice it took no effort? You're creating that effortlessly, just like all creation is effortless. So you are a creator, and you are creating with your mind. You are creating with thought, right? And by the way, there's just as many actions that happen when you create against yourself. You're literally doing things like you are talking to people and making phone calls that manifest into horrible things.
Yeah.
It's not like action's not involved. You are doing it all. Right? and you call them and you speak to them in that tone of voice, and they hang up on you. So you are using your action to create. It's not like you're not. Right. Oh, and by the way, that's effortless. You didn't even have to think about that. You just picked up the phone and called them. And you created what you created. See how easy it is, right? It's all effortless.
And
right?
sometimes you were really quick to pick up that phone and tell them what you thought.
Yes. Which brings us more to this point about, you're a wonderful creator. You're just not deliberate, and you're just not awake.
Yeah. And so let's come back to that then, Dominic, just to make sure I'm hearing it right and it's there for people to take from this conversation. So what I think I see as you're describing it is this being in this moment, in the now, because it's all we've got, and waking up to the feeling. So the feeling's going to guide you as to whether your thinking is pure, for want of a better word, or personal, like off track, let's say. It's like a barometer. And the more intense the feeling, because if you're not aware, don't worry, because it'll get stronger. The more intense the feeling, at some point, you're going to hear the alarm clock. And it's going to be, oh, wrong way. So if I just care less, if I'm like, oh, what if I just cared less? And it's like a being willing to surrender to this in that moment. Like, what if I just tried it out? I can go back to my old way if I don't like it, but what if I just cared less about that thought in this moment? And then what happens? What can I do here? And Dominic, I'm sharing it because I really do see that you model this so well. This comes so naturally to you. And it can be a case of like when we're not in the same place, we always are, because we're always in the now. I get that, but I'm just going to use the best words I have. When we're not in the same place, it can be really difficult to understand, but how can I do that? It's all right for you. I've had this. It's all right for you because, and it's like, how can I help someone really get into the practice of this for themselves? Because we're not different, and they do have the same capacity and the same thoughts.
Here's what's true, though. Though you use these words, even, is like the only thing you have to do is you've got to care about how you feel. You've got to care about how you feel. If you don't care about how you feel, then you don't care about guidance and you don't care about your wisdom, right? And that's okay. Go live life and create without wisdom. Go do it, right? Because don't worry. As you go do that, don't worry, it'll get worse. Right? And so it's not a big problem. But when it comes to what really, I can't do this. I can't do this. What can't you do? You can't care about the way you feel. You can't care about the way you feel. You can't care. I say you don't even have a choice about that. I say if you calm down and notice, that you will notice you actually care about the way you feel. I say that when you calm down in this present moment, not in your head, that you will notice there is a caring about the way you feel, and a caring is there to feel better. Always in this moment.
Yeah.
Anything else is your nonsense.
Yes. And then, so let's elaborate on that a little bit, because I do care about how I feel, and I want to feel more peaceful.
Good. And you think you're going to feel more peaceful once you finish the war. That's okay. Don't worry. It'll get worse.
Mm.
Go with your thought. Go with the best thought you've got. Go with it. Go to war, arm up, add more arms, gather a larger army, and you will find peace on the other side of it. Since that's your wisdom, go for it. And don't worry, you will see what you are creating, and it will give you the feedback so that you can have your own clarity about what direction that piece is in.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then do you see then, Dominic, is this a common theme that emerges when we go with it and we don't worry about it and we arm up? Do you see that at some point we just surrender?
Oh, you will. You will. By the way, in the end, the path down there, by the way, in resistance, people come up with all kinds of creative ways. It's just what we do, right? So there, I mean, alcohol, for example, is one helpful way that helps you stop.
Mm.
You're going to be that insistent, right? So wisdom brings solutions like alcohol, which will make it difficult for you. It will make it difficult for your personal mind to keep holding that particular thought. With alcohol, that's very difficult, right? So it's unsustainable. There may be a different way to do this than that, but that becomes unsustainable, right? But it points to why all those solutions come is because they're all a solution of the same thing. Is how do I let go of this crap? Because when I let go of this crap, I move to the other side, which feels better. I moved back to the wisdom. I moved back to who I really am, which feels better. Now, here I think for practical in a moment, this is good to understand. In every single moment of now, no matter where you are, all right, we said, you're at a level of consciousness. Law of attraction is bringing me more. Thank you very much. People love law of attraction. Yeah, in any direction. It's effortless creating in any direction, right? It's all effortless. So law of attraction is bringing you more wherever you are. But so you're in a particular moment. You care about how you feel. You notice how you feel. You're aware of how you feel. You care to feel better. Here's the good news. In every single moment of now, you can have, you do have access to a thought or a focus of consciousness, same word. In this moment of now, you have access to a thought that feels a little better than this. And you have access to a thought that feels just a little worse than this one. That is always true. In every moment of now, standing where you are standing, I'm overwhelmed. There's just too many things for me to do. I don't see. I'm going to have to, okay, if I catch that, next, there's a thought that feels a little better than this and one that feels a little worse. Feels a little worse is, I don't think I'm going to get this done, and then I'm going to get in serious trouble. Feels a little worse. I don't know how I'm going to get this done, but I've come out of things like this before. That felt a little better. Now, here's what happens. You have that much ability in every moment of now and freedom. You have that much freedom and ability to discern a thought that feels a little bit better. And when you move to a thought that feels a little bit better, you are in a new moment, here and now, in a new vibration. And in that moment, in that vibration, you have access to a thought that feels a little better, and a thought feels a little better, and one that feels a little worse. And you'll make your choice. And as you move to a different thought, in that moment of now, you will find that you have an ability to focus on one that feels a little worse and one that feels a little better.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like your wisdom is guiding you home. Your wisdom is guiding you by the feeling. That wisdom is guiding you. That is the thinking that is wise and the thinking that is personal thinking.
Mm-hmm.
And you are never disconnected from this. You're never disconnected. You always have this access. How incredible.
Yeah, it really is incredible. It's like it just takes away the responsibility. You know,
Totally.
like you say, you can relax about this because this is going on anyway.
Right.
One of the things that I'll just share that I've found really helpful, and I'm curious to know what you would say, is in these moments, like there's moments where I'm like at the top of the tree in terms of, you know, seeing clearly, in the good feeling. And in those moments, I tend to like set myself up well for when the other moments sweep in. And,
Yeah.
you know, one of the ways that was so simple to do was I would just write something on a Post-it note and stick it on my screen. And it could be something like 3 values I want to live today. You know, so if I go into that, like, oh God, they're not listening to me. And then on here, I've got this generosity. I could just clock it, and it's enough for that wiggle room to just kind of ignite, to be like, you know what? I'm not living that. So I like the practical side of things as well, Dominic, to take this, everything that we're talking about, and to really be able to like bring it alive for us, even though it would come alive anyway. It's like, how can I give myself a helping hand?
Yeah, and this is something that I find curious in the distortion of what Sydney Banks said, because it is a distortion of what he said, right? So in what he said was that in every moment you have access to wisdom and a guidance, and then see, you just described that you were in a moment, knowing in a moment, a present moment of now, you were in a moment and you knew that you are about to go on to a session, you're going to do a client thing. I don't know what you're doing. You're going to do something. And in that moment, the thought occurred to you to remind yourself of what you're about and what your commitment is in that session. Now, the reason the thought occurred to you and wouldn't have occurred to Bob or wouldn't have occurred to Jane, because that wisdom is it is so precise to you. It's very precise to you. So because I'm totally making this stuff up. So because you'll go into that kind of a session, which for you has a set of conditioned thinking and kind of beliefs and stuff, which aren't serving you, and they get in your way all the time, right? So wisdom says, but that's not what you want. You don't want to be in that session coming out of your conditioned thinking. You want to be in that session caring about them and really contributing to them. And so your wisdom says, here, do this. Here, do this. Now that's wisdom. And you do it, and you put a Post-it note and you put it up there, right? Now, all this bullshit that people say about, yeah, but you shouldn't do anything. This is an understanding. This isn't about doing anything. So here's what I mean, the distortion of what Sid said. The minute you offer people a brand new practice, which is the practice of non-doing, that should be the disciplined practice you have, is not to do anything. That's the one you should follow. Listen to me. Listen to me over your own wisdom, that when you get this impulse to meditate, when you get this impulse that you should go for a walk when you're stressed, listen to me. Listen to me. I say use a practice which is not to do any of those things. Don't do anything ever like that. Listen to me. What kind of
yeah, I'm not sure I would hire you as my coach, Dominic. I got to be honest.
You always listen to you. You always listen to that. You always listen to what that is. And that will steer you. And it's going to work for as long as it works until you're at a different level of consciousness, because now you've moved. And then a different impulse is going to come. And a different impulse is going to come. And then you're going to notice, because you won't even notice. You're just going to notice like, oh, I used to always put the Post-it notes up. It's been 2 weeks I haven't put the Post-it notes up. What's going on with that? I forgot all about that. Because you're on a different thing now. Do you see? You can always trust that. Always you can trust that. It knows what's good.
Yeah, I love that. Gosh, I have so many more questions. But I do know we're at the top of the hour, Dominic. So shall we wrap up for today? I'm gonna make sure that I'll write my questions down, and then next time we speak, if they're still there, then I might bring them in. Let's find out. But yeah, thank you so much for the conversation again. It's been equally as fun as the first one. And I'm excited.
Thank you. I've enjoyed it.
Mm-hmm.
All right. I'll see you again. See you at our next conversation. Thanks.
Yeah. Thanks, Dominic. Bye.